Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land your job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hey guys, this is Virginia Franco. Welcome to the Resume Storyteller podcast. It occurred to me earlier this week that I have never spent any time sort of talking through how the heck to figure out if you should work with a writer or a coach on your career marketing documents, your resume and LinkedIn, nor have we ever talked about how best to sort of whittle down the list. Because last time I checked on LinkedIn, it's like 784,000 people that identify as a career coach or an employment specialist or a resume writer. So there's a lot of us out there. So let's start with determining on if it makes sense to work with someone. Usually when you are testing the waters or you're looking to make a career leap or maybe you are struggling with your job security, you're worried about your job, or maybe you just hate your role right now. A first step for many people, maybe not the first step, but one of the first steps towards finding or changing jobs is getting your resume together, getting your LinkedIn looking great. I know from experience that it is really, really hard to write about yourself. Even people that are great writers struggle to tell their own stories. Case in point, I wrote my own LinkedIn. I write all my own blogs, all my news articles. But when it came to writing my own resume, I outsourced it. I just felt like it was too hard to boil down my own blood, sweat, and tears onto a couple pages. So talking to someone else and sharing my story and having them sort of get that high-level overview and committing it to paper was very helpful for me. But before you decide to outsource or hire a professional versus sort of determining if it's best to go it alone, I recommend you ask yourself a couple of really important questions. Have you been job hunting? If so, are you seeing results? If you haven't yet started, is your field competitive? Are you looking to, if it is competitive, then you might need some help. If it's not and people are banging down your door, then, maybe you don't need to work with a professional. Why spend the money if people are jumping at the bit? I sort of liken it to back when the housing market was booming and, you could have your house be filthy and people would buy it. Then when the market was scarce, you really needed to do a little bit more work to it. Sort of the same, I think it's sort of similar to resumes and LinkedIn. Another thing to think about is how big of a leap are you making? Are you looking to make a lateral move? Or maybe you're looking to make a jump into a new industry, maybe that next level role from director to VP. If the leap is big, then you might need to work with someone to sort of position you for that new role, whereas it's much easier to write something that positions you laterally. Maybe it has, ask yourself, how long has it been since you have updated your resume, not just in content, but in format? If you have stuck with the same format that worked for you back when you got out of college, then, it might be time to take a look and talk to someone who understands what resumes look like today, because trust me, they look very different. Heck, even resumes I wrote 5-8 years ago that killed it back then, aren't doing as well today because people are reading differently. 8 years ago, I was not writing for mobile. I can tell you that. I was writing for online reads. But small screen reading requires a different kind of writing. So those are just some things to think about to determine if you can, in fact, go it alone or if it might make sense to work with someone. So if you have decided that, yes, I need to explore hiring a professional to write your resume, write your LinkedIn, one of the things that I think is an important criteria to consider is certification. Look, I know a lot of great resume writers that do not hold certifications. So it is not the end all to be all, but I will tell you that when you are trying to whittle down a pool of 700,000+, having a certification can, it is a good way to help, again, narrow it down, because at least those people have gone through some sort of an organizational vetting process to sort of say that they are current on resume writing best practices. I have a couple of certifications from some different organizations. I'll tell you about a couple of the organizations that are out there. And what's great about them is that they have, if you go to their websites, they have directories. And a lot of the directories have little bios that you can review. It'll tell you if they've passed that organization certification, and you can learn a little bit about them. First, let me talk about the National Résumé Writers Association. Full disclosure, I have been on their board for the last 4 years. I was last year's president. What appealed to me about that organization, why I got involved, is that it's a nonprofit. But they have a nationally certified resume writer designation, the NCRW, and you can find all of the NCRWs on the National Résumé Writers Association's website at the nrwa.org. Another one that I'm also a member of is the Career Thought Leaders Association, and they have a couple of certifications, the MRW, which I hold, which is the Master Resume Writer, ACRW, and then they have a couple of other ones as well. The Professional Association of Resume Writers, or PARW, has their flagship certification, the CPRW, which stands for Certified Professional Resume Writer. And then the other organization that I should make sure to mention is Career Directors International. So check out those websites, go to the directories, and see who sort of catches your eye. The other thing that's really important to consider when you're doing your research is, what is that person's business model like? What's their methodology for getting your information and working with you to write your documents? Everyone has a different approach, and there is no one size fits all. That's what I always tell people when they call me. This is not no one size fits all. It's important to ask each other questions to see if you think you're a good fit. And the trick is to find the approach, obviously, that works best for you. So, for instance, are you comfortable working with someone just through email? Or would you rather talk to them on the phone? Some people have no desire to talk to someone. They want to submit it, have a writer edit it, make it look pretty, and that works. Other people like me, I will do an in-depth 90-minute interview with my clients and listen to their career stories. I want to know everything they have done from the beginning of time to what they're doing now, to understand what they were proud of, what they hated, all of it. And I use that information to craft my resumes. Another thing to consider is, how much upfront work do you want to do in order to work with your writer? Some people will ask you to fill out a quick worksheet, just a couple questions. Other people have a pretty in-depth questionnaire, and then they use that to write all of your documents. Some people, like myself, I don't like working with worksheets and templates. Not that it's wrong, it's just I don't like to work like that. So people come to me because they just want to get on the phone, tell someone their story, because they don't have time or they don't like to write. So think about what works for you, because all of that does, it impacts the pricing and it impacts how much time you're going to spend. Another thing to consider is, would you rather work with a company that has a team of writers, or maybe you want to work with an individual? The beauty of having a company with a team of writers is that you can probably get in to get your stuff done pretty quickly. Other people like me work one-on-one with someone from start to finish. And so, because the relationship building is important, they'd rather work with someone like me. Most of my clients have been with me for about a decade, which means every couple years when they get the itch to make a new move, we get on the phone, talk through stuff, and I'll update their documents over and over again. That works great for me, but a company that might be a little different. So there are pros and cons to each. So I recommend figuring out which style makes you most comfortable and proceed from there. And a great way to do that is to get on the phone with them, talk to them. Never make this decision without having done some comparative shopping, that's for sure. So we've talked about certification. We have talked about methodology. Now it's time to do your due diligence. It's trust and verify time. Look, working with another person on your career, marketing materials, your blood, sweat, and tears requires a shared level of trust. To me, a great way for you to get this is by verifying. How can you verify? A couple ways. One, ask your friends. Ask people who just got jobs. How did they get their job? Did anyone do their resume? Get recommendations. If you don't know anyone or they don't know anyone, go to the people's websites and look under the recommendation section. See how others describe the person, how they describe working with them, how they describe the final product and the results. If someone doesn't have any recommendations, that might be a red flag. You could also look at Google reviews, Yelp, all of that. But what I like about, they're all great, but what I like about LinkedIn reviews is you can actually reach out to the person who wrote it and, get some additional intel, where with Google and Yelp and all of that, you can't do that. I am also a fan of asking for samples. I know some of my colleagues are not, and I understand the reasons for that. A lot of them have been burnt where people took their samples and then stole them. And I get why that's a concern. I've been lucky. I have, if someone's taken my stuff and copied it, I have not come across it yet. So if it's really important for you to see some samples before you work with someone, then ask. And make sure to work with someone who's comfortable giving them to you. So we have talked about certification to help whittle it down, the methodology, the business model to see if that works with what you're comfortable with. And now we have talked about due diligence, or, trusting and verifying, or verifying to earn the trust, I should say. Lastly, let's talk about what kind of a investment are we talking about. We've already talked about the time investment that's involved, and that's you determine that through the evaluating the business model. But at the end of the day, how much money you spend is a big factor for people. And the truth is that there's a lot of factors that go into business owners like me making their determination, and there's a big range out there. So I could speak to my own pricing. My pricing varies dramatically based on how many years of experience someone has, how complex the story is that I'm trying to tell. If I'm just writing a lateral move resume, that is not as hard as writing one for someone that is looking to make a big, huge career jump. The other thing that's important to consider is, what kind of shape is the current resume in? Was it written with a format that worked 10 years ago? Are we doing it from scratch? Or maybe it was written professionally 3 years ago and the person just has one new job to update. So all those things factor into the budget. I know a lot of people that make determine their fee structure based on the level you're at. So a C-suite person, they might charge a lot more than obviously someone who's been working for 5 years or so. So all those things need to be taken into account. The other thing is if someone, the pricing of someone who specializes in writing resumes for people in New York City might be different than someone who their target market is in a small town in the middle of America. So what the market bears is another thing to consider. Some writers like me, I work globally, so I can't really factor in the cost of living. So I take those other factors into consideration. Pricing can range anywhere from, honestly, a $99 hack where you might be dealing with someone in another country writing this without ever talking to you, all the way up to, $3,000 for a super high touch, super senior person. So think about how much you are willing to spend and weigh it against all those other points that we have discussed earlier. The bottom line, in my view, is that collaborating with a writer or a career marketing professional to distill your lifetime of work into documents that present you in the best possible light, it requires research. It requires very careful consideration. So you've got to do your homework, determine your deal breakers before you take the plunge. So I hope that helped, guys. Take care.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's skim online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.